All right, the field is set. The brackets are in. And it's time to get down to business. Now let me tell y'all, for my big blue nation, that number 3 seed out west, I'm liking where we're sitting, and I'm liking our road. Now potentially down the road we could wind up with a North Carolina Michigan rematch from back when I was young, and that's what all these people on Bracketology and on ESPN are talking about, how that's set up for the rematch. But I mean, realistically, who cares? Because the bottom line is the kids that are playing both for us in Michigan, Rockman, Wagner, and Simpson. And these guys, you know, they were either 1 year old or weren't even born when the Fab Five played North Carolina, and Chris Webber had the famous TO that we didn't have. So, I mean, to call it a rematch, yeah, I guess, but these kids don't know anything about that, most likely, unless they're history students or something. So anyways, let's get down to the brackets. Let's talk about who's playing who and what I think. So the number 1 overall seed is the number 1 team in the country right now, Virginia, and because they play good defense, I like them to go away. So let's just start with that. Virginia versus UMBC. I like Virginia, obviously, to move on there. I don't think a 16 seed's ever beat a number 1. So I like Virginia there. And the next game is Creighton versus Kansas State, 8 versus 9. These 8 versus 9s, you never know, because they're really evenly matched most of the time. But I think I will take Creighton in that. 5 versus 12, you got Kentucky versus Davidson. Come on, Kentucky's not losing in the first round, so we'll put Kentucky through there. Arizona versus Buffalo. Arizona goes through there. They didn't win the Pac-12 for the first time in a long time, but I think that they will be all right as they go forward, or at least until that second round matchup with Kentucky. Miami, University of Miami, that's a football school. They're a decent basketball team, a 6 seed, but I like Loyola of Chicago to upset them there. Number 11 beating the 6, which happens quite frequently. Number 3 seed is Tennessee in that region versus Wright State. Tennessee looked good against Kentucky in the SEC championship game today. So I will roll with the Tennessee Volunteers there, buddies. All right, so moving down to finish out that region, Nevada versus Texas. Nevada's the 7 seed. Texas is the 10 seed, but I like Texas to knock off Nevada. And their prize in the next round, in the round of 32, will be to take on the Cincinnati Bearcats in the number 2 seed, because there's no way, I don't think, that Georgia State at 15 is beating Cincinnati. So that is that side. Now let's move down to where the Wolverines are out west. Number 1 seed is Xavier. Obviously, again, 1 versus 16. I like Xavier moving on there. Missouri versus Florida State in the 8-9 seed. Give me the Tigers of Missouri. In fact, that might be a tough matchup in the round of 32 for Xavier. Missouri versus Xavier there. We'll see how that shakes down. Then the Buckeyes are the number 5 seed there. As much as I would love to see San Diego State beat them, and 12 does beat 5, about as much as 11 beats 6. But I don't see the Buckeyes losing there, so Ohio State moves on. And their prize in the round of 32 is to play Gonzaga because they are the 4 seed going up against University of North Carolina, Greensboro. Gonzaga gets by them and sets up that 4 versus 5 against Ohio State. Moving on down in that region, Houston versus San Diego State. Houston's the 6 and San Diego State's the 11. However, San Diego State can really score. So I will take San Diego State to upset Houston in another 11-6 upset. And then you have the Wolverines, baby, number 3 team out west versus Montana. I'll take Michigan definitely to move on there and set up a matchup with San Diego State in the round of 32. And to round out the West Division, you have Providence versus Texas A&M. Texas A&M is the 7 seed. Providence is the 10. I'm going to go with the 10-7 upset here, and I will take Providence. But they upset Texas A&M, and then their prize is to play number 2 seed North Carolina, as I have North Carolina obviously beating Lipscomb, which I don't even know where the fuck that is, but the Tar Heels move on there to play Providence. Let's move now out east, and in the East Division you have Villanova versus whoever wins the play-in game. Villanova being the 1 seed out east, 1 beats 16. Villanova moves on. 8-9 matchup in the East is Virginia Tech versus Alabama. Virginia Tech's 8, Bama's 9. Roll Tide on that one. I'll take the 9 to beat the 8 there. Then you have West Virginia, the 5 seed versus Murray State. I'm going to go ahead and go with number 5, West Virginia here, but I do it somewhat reluctantly because the past several years, whenever I have picked up West Virginia and thought that they were going to at least make a decent run to the Sweet 16 or so, they got knocked off by somebody crazy. But I'm going to go ahead and roll with West Virginia here. So the number 4 seed is Wichita State, playing the Thundering Herd of Marshall, who are the 13 seed. I think Wichita State goes ahead and gets that done there, although I thought about taking Marshall. That might be kind of interesting, but I'll stick with 4 over 13 there. Wichita State moves on. The number 6 seed is Florida, and they are going to get a number 11 seed, whoever wins that play-in game. The Gators are usually pretty good in tournament play, so I will take the Gators at least in that first round matchup against whoever wins number 11 seed there in the play-in game. The number 3 seed is Texas Tech, and they have to play Stephen F. Austin. Now, Stephen F. Austin is one of these small schools that a lot of people don't know about, but they should know about because they're a basketball factory down there. So I am going to take a 14 seed over the 3 seed here. Stephen F. Austin upsets Texas Tech, moves on to the round of 32 to play Florida. To round out that section of the brackets, you have number 7 Arkansas versus number 10 Butler. I'll take number 10 over 7 there. Butler moves on, and their prize is to have to play Purdue in the next round, as number 2 Purdue gets past CSU Fullerton. So that rounds up 3 of them. Now let's move to the Midwest, where the Michigan State Spartans are and get to play their first round game right here in Detroit at LCA. Little Caesars Arena. So the Midwest Division, the number 1 seed there is Kansas. versus the Ivy League champs Penn. I like Kansas to move on there. In an 8-9 matchup, Seton Hall gets North Carolina State. I'll take the 9 seed there. Again, 9/8, North Carolina State moves on. Congratulations, you get Kansas. You're screwed after that. The number 5 seed is Clemson, and they're taking on number 12, New Mexico State. Again, you have a 12-5 matchup here, which is usually where those upsets come from. So I will take the Lobos of New Mexico State. Give me the 12 versus 5 upset. They move on. And in the next round, they are going to get the winner of Auburn, the number 4 seed, versus Charleston, the 13 seed, in a 4 versus 13, and with it being Auburn, give me War Eagle there. My brother would probably kill me if I didn't pick Auburn there. So Auburn moves on to play New Mexico State in the round of 32. That brings us to this part of the bracket where rival Michigan State and DJ Okoral's alum there are taking on Bucknell, which Bucknell's a pretty good tournament team no matter where they're seated. Michigan State's 3, Bucknell's 14. Give me the Spartans in that one. I think they can at least get that much done. And then they will get the winner of the 6 versus 11 seed, TCU versus the play-in number 11. It could be Arizona State or it could be Syracuse, whoever wins that play-in game. I think in an 11 versus 6, this is kind of like those 12 versus 5s, and I will take the upset there too. I will take what I would assume will be ASU versus TCU, but even if it's Syracuse, I'll take 11 to beat 6 there, but then their prize is going to be Michigan State, and I think Michigan State will get that done too to move on into the Sweet 16. At the bottom of this division, you have University of Rhode Island taking on Oklahoma, which was one of the shockers that Oklahoma actually made the tournament because they played like dog shit down the stretch the last month and a half to 2 months of the season. But nevertheless, they got in as a 10 seed in against University of Rhode Island in a 10-7 matchup with Oklahoma as the 10. How can you not give me the Sooners? So, but then they're going to get bounced in the next round because their grand prize for beating Rhode Island is going to be to take on Mike Krzyzewski and the Duke Blue Devils, who are the number 2 seed there in the Midwest. They get by Ionia, who's the 15 seed, and Duke moves on. All right, let's stay in this region and go through this quickly. So, moving on to the Sweet 16, I got Duke over Oklahoma. So, Duke will play Michigan State in the Sweet 16 matchup. And then I got Duke beating Michigan State to move to the Elite 8. In the other part of that, Kansas versus North Carolina State, I got Kansas moving on, then Auburn versus New Mexico State. Give me War Eagle again. And so then now you've got Kansas and Auburn. I'll take Auburn to upset Kansas. So your Elite 8 over there is Auburn and Duke, and I'll take Duke to the Final 4 out of that section. Moving back to the West, Xavier versus Missouri. I think that Missouri could beat them, but give me Xavier. Ohio State versus Gonzaga. I'll take Gonzaga. Michigan versus San Diego State. Obviously, go blue. And North Carolina versus Providence. You get your North Carolina-Michigan rematch. All right, so Xavier Gonzaga. I think this might be Gonzaga's year to make a decent-sized run. So give me Gonzaga to upset Xavier, and give me Big Blue to get it done this time, 20 years later against North Carolina. So you got an Elite 8 matchup of 3 versus 4, Michigan versus Gonzaga. Again, give me Big Blue to the Final 4. So I got Duke and Michigan so far in the Final Four. All right, so let's go up back to the South. And I got Virginia versus Creighton. Obviously, UVA moves on. Kentucky and Arizona. I like the youngsters and John Calipari, so that sets up a Sweet 16 matchup between UVA and Kentucky. The bottom of that division, you got Loyola Chicago versus Tennessee. Give me the Vols in that one, and they'll take on the winner of Texas Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati, the Bearcats, move on to that one to set up Sweet 16 of Tennessee and Cincinnati. So in Kentucky versus Virginia, I think number one gets it done. Kentucky's just too young at this point. Virginia plays just too good of a defense. So I've got Virginia into the Elite Eight. Tennessee and Cincinnati, 2 versus 3 again. I'll take the 3 again. Tennessee moves on. So then you got UVA versus Tennessee in the Elite Eight. And I will take UVA to the Final Four there. So now I've got UVA versus Michigan on one side, Duke on the other side, and let's move back over here to the East so I can tell you who Duke's going to play in the Final Four. All right, so we've got Virginia versus Alabama. I can't roll, or I'm sorry, scratch that. Villanova versus Alabama. I can't roll Tide any further than that. Villanova moves on. Wichita State versus West Virginia in a 4 versus 5 matchup. That should be a very good game. But again, against my better judgment, give me West Virginia to move on there to set up a Sweet 16 matchup between Villanova, West Virginia. At the bottom of that bracket, you got Purdue versus Butler. Butler gets past Arkansas to get there, but Purdue's too much for him there. Purdue moves on to the Sweet 16. I got Florida versus Stephen F. Austin. I think the 14 seed is going to roll all the way to the Sweet 16. Give me Stephen F. Austin to beat Florida as well. And set up the matchup in the Sweet 16 of Purdue versus Stephen F. Austin. So you got Villanova, West Virginia, Purdue, Stephen F. Austin. I'm going to stay chalk on this side of the bracket. Give me number 1 Villanova versus number 2 Purdue in terms of who's going to be in the Elite Eight over there. And Villanova versus Purdue, 1 versus 2. I'm going to stay chalk there. Give me Villanova to move on to the Final Four. So my Final Four is the University of Virginia taking on Big Blue. And on the other side, Villanova, number 1, taking on number 2, Duke. So you got 2 number 1s, a number 2, and then Michigan, the number 3 in my Final Four. UVA versus Michigan. Both teams play good defense. Both teams are solid on offense. I think our ability to beat anybody, as long as we're knocking down 3-pointers, though, gets us past number 1. Give me Michigan to the championship game. To take on Mike Krzyzewski in the Duke Blue Devils. I think Duke gets it done against number 1 Villanova. So now you have the Michigan versus Duke matchup for the championship game. And hey, if we're going to go this far to the championship game, how could I not say we're going to knock down enough 3-pointers to knock off Mike Krzyzewski and the Duke Blue Devils? Give me Big Blue all the way, national champions. Final score, 82 Michigan, Duke 79. Those are the picks. That's what I think. I love where U of M is at, and you know, call me a homer, call me what you want, but I got it down on my brackets for money. Money's on Big Blue, and I think that Wagner, Rockman, and the boys get it done all the way to the championship. We're hosting the banner. We're national champions. Go frickin' Blue. Peace!